Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you can tell by the title, this is going to be my labor and delivery story. It's basically just going to be me explaining to you guys everything that I went through during my labor and delivery of my daughter, and then I do have a little clip of the actual delivery that I'm going to insert for you guys. The hospital didn't really allow any type of filming, so unfortunately I wasn't able to do like a full video, which I was hoping to do for you guys. So it's just kind of a little clip of it, but I am going to be explaining in detail everything basically that I went through, how long the labor was, and everything like that. So I have a little bit of notes here just so I can kind of have some bullet points to go through and I'm not rambling on so much. So the first thing basically is just telling you guys 2 weeks prior to my delivery date, I actually went in for the checkup. For those of you that are pregnant, you know that you go in at the very end, the last month of your pregnancy, every single week to basically get checked. My doctor does not do a cervical check until about the 39th week of pregnancy, so I didn't know if I was dilated at all prior to that or anything. So when I went in, we did find out that I was 2 centimeters dilated. So 2 weeks before I was due, I was already 2 centimeters dilated. So we, of course, were hoping that she would be coming early. The doctor had high hopes of that. He was saying, based upon being a first-time pregnancy and such, you should definitely be going into labor, I would say, within the next week. So that's what we were just kind of playing the waiting game, thinking it was going to be occurring, but I had absolutely no signs. I wasn't having contractions, pains, anything like that. So come the day of my daughter's due date, she was due on Memorial Day weekend, so May 27th. And on May 26th was the day before, of course. I was feeling totally normal. I decided to go for a walk with my husband, so we kind of did like a walk around the track field to see if, you know, that could maybe progress things a little bit. So we took a nice little walk out there, and then my aunt was actually coming up from Virginia because it was, of course, like I mentioned, Memorial Day weekend, and she wanted to come spend the holiday with the family. So she came on up that day. I decided to come home from my walk, I want to say about 7 o'clock at night, and my mom lives about only 10 minutes from me, so I was going to drive on over there. So I headed over, same thing, not feeling anything whatsoever. Once I got there, I basically was just, you know, sitting on the couch, relaxing. I got a little hungry. I had kind of like a little snack and such, and my aunt hadn't seen me in a few months, so she, of course, was like, wow, you're really big. When do you think you're going to have the baby? And I was just like, honestly, I don't think she's coming anytime soon, were my exact words. And then when I got home, it was about midnight, and I decided to just, you know, kind of jump in the shower to head in for the night. I took a nice shower. I went into bed, I want to say around 1:30 in the morning. And then for those of you, same thing, if you're pregnant towards the very end, you know you're constantly going to the bathroom, especially at nighttime. So I would usually get up every couple of hours to use the bathroom. At around 3:50, 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with the urge to go to the restroom. So I get up from my bed, I stand up, and the second that I stand up, there was like a gush of water that went all over the floor. So I automatically knew, okay, this is my water breaking and it is time to head to the hospital. So I woke my husband up and I told him, you know, babe, my water just broke, so we have to go. So he was still half asleep. He didn't know what was going on. He just kind of woke up and he was like, "See, for real?" I was like, "Yeah, it's time." So he called the doctor and they just, you know, basically instructed us that yes, you should go in. This way we can make sure we test the fluid to make sure it was indeed your water. It was tinged with some blood, so that did get me kind of worried. As I am a first-time mom, I didn't know what your water breaking looks like. Everyone in my family, their water never broke. They always had to have the doctor do it for them. So I kind of didn't have any type of advice or things to kind of go by to know what to expect in that aspect. So we head over to the hospital, and for those of you little TMI, when your water breaks, it never stops going until you actually deliver the baby, which I didn't know. I went to the hospital. I had like 2 pads on with my pants. By the time we arrived to the hospital, that was about 20 minutes from our house. Totally soaked, and, you know, I had to change my clothes and everything. And the entire time when I needed to get up for the restroom or anything like that during delivery, just tons of fluid just coming out. So that was kind of uncomfortable. Once we got to the hospital, they of course tested the fluid, and they said that it was indeed, you know, my water had broke, the amniotic fluid, and that we would be having the baby within 24 hours or less, because if you do happen to have your water break, the chances of infection increase a lot more, so you have to deliver the baby within 24 hours. We went in, they said that my water had broke, so we were just kind of waiting in for the doctor to come in and check me. The doctor came in, did a check, and said that I was 2 centimeters dilated, which I was the same thing 2 weeks prior. He asked me, "You're 2 centimeters dilated, have you been having any type of contractions?" I explained to him, yeah, my husband was kind of timing it. They're about 5 minutes apart. I was hooked up to the monitors, so they went ahead and checked on that, and they said, yep, you're correct. It looks like you're having little contractions about every 5 minutes. By the time they admitted me into the hospital, it was about like an hour or two later. So they basically said, it seems like, you know, your body's not progressing, so we do suggest doing Pitocin, or, you know, inserting a balloon in there. So I really didn't want to have to do any type of drugs to like induce the labor. So I told them, would it be okay if I just tried the balloon portion, which it can dilate you to 4 centimeters and then kind of like push your body into going on it, and it's your own. So by the time they ordered that and they came back in to check me after about an hour later, they said that I had now dilated to 3.5 centimeters. So there was absolutely no point at that time to put the balloon in, because as I said, it only brings you up to 4 centimeters. I was already at 3.5 at that point, and it looked like the body was progressing. So we went ahead and nixed that idea, and I was just going into labor. My contractions were becoming, you know, more stronger and such, but nothing like unbearable that I couldn't deal with. Just kind of breathe through them and they would pass. So then by the time the next check came, I unfortunately hadn't progressed. It was the same thing. They tried to check me like every 2 hours, it seems like that was what was happening. And it comes the next 2-hour check, I hadn't progressed in any way. So they then suggested that I think it's time for you to do the Pitocin. So at that point, we went ahead and we were gonna order the Pitocin, but I did ask them if I could just wait a little bit longer. And I did also want to get the epidural before the Pitocin, because I heard once they induce the labor like that with drugs, it does create intense contractions and a lot of pain. I was 4 centimeters dilated, and then the contractions were coming on strong. So I said, you know, this is painful. I need to have the contraction. I need to have the epidural. When they checked my baby, I was, she was, I'm trying to think, anterior or posterior, I can't exactly remember, but it's basically where she's turned facing my back, so that would create back labor. Now, I heard from others that had back labor, they say that's kind of the most painful labor to endure with like contraction stuff. It makes them a lot worse, and you feel it all in your lower back area as well as the frontal portion. So because I was going through that, I definitely, you know, didn't want to have to try and suck it up and be miserable. I really wanted to live in the moment for when my daughter came. I was petrified because I hate needles, but I knew, you know, it would be like 5-10 minutes of pain versus hours of like excruciating pain, because as I said, I was only 4 centimeters and I have to go all the way to 10. So I did get the epidural, and for those of you that are worried about it, definitely don't worry about it. I'm, like I said, a total wimp when it comes to needles, and it didn't hurt at all. I decided to take advantage of that time and kind of take a nap. It was a little difficult because although I wasn't feeling the contractions in my stomach or my back anymore, I was still feeling them down in my private area. So in the entire time, I could kind of feel like the pressure, like a contraction. I remember telling my mom, she's like, oh, you know, how are you feeling? Are you feeling contraction? And I said, and even to the nurse, I said, you know, it's great. I'm not really feeling the contraction where you normally would feel it. I go, but it's really weird. Like, I'm feeling it down there. So she said, you know, that was normal. Maybe you're just having like, it's just pressure because the baby's getting lower and such. So we just attribute it to that. So I was like, okay, fine. This is something I'm just going to have to suck up the pain of and, you know, deal with it. So come another 2 hours, the doctor comes in to check me, and I am now 8 centimeters dilated. So I was super excited. I got to get a little bit of rest to kind of give me the energy for the pushing, which I needed. And then the labor was progressing really quickly. So at that point, when I was 8 centimeters dilated, my mom and my husband, they were the only ones. They allowed 2 people in the delivery room, and they were the ones, of course, that I wanted there. So they decided that, they asked the doctor, would it be okay if we went and grabbed some lunch right now? This way we can be here, you know, and really have energy and be ready for the hard part of the pushing. So she said, yeah, no problem, go ahead, since she checks me usually every 2 hours. So she thought I would definitely have 2 hours. They could go to lunch. They went out to lunch, I would say after about like 10-15 minutes, I told the nurse I am feeling like the urge to poop. So every time I ask, you know, other moms that have had babies and such, they say that usually means it's time to push. So she went ahead and she goes, okay, let me get the doctor so she could check you to see if you progressed, even though she just checked me about like 15 minutes prior. She grabbed her. By the time she came in, it was about 30 minutes. She went and checked me and she said, okay, if you're ready to push, it's time to push. So I was calling my husband. I called him about 4 times. He didn't pick up the phone. So I was like frantic, you know, he has to be here, it's time to push. And then I decided to call my mom and she finally picked up. So they came back into the room and we just kind of started pushing. My husband didn't really think it was like happening right then and there, because the way that it was, like you see on these videos and stuff, they have like the things that they put your legs on and it's like this whole thing, it's ready to push. But for me, it was a little more like relaxed the way the doctor did it. I was laying in the bed and she said, okay, just sit up now, and every time you feel that urge to poop, it's time to push. So that means a contraction is coming and you just have to give us 3 like really good pushes. So I said, okay, no problem. So my husband's like asking her, so is this really happening? Like, is this the real deal? So she goes, yeah, you know, this is it. We're pushing and we're gonna get a baby out. So I started pushing and I noticed every time I would do like the first push, of course, would be the strongest, be really good. The second push, same thing, pretty strong. But by the third push, I guess my body would get weaker, or I just wouldn't necessarily know how to push in the appropriate way. So I was, you know, going ahead and pushing. Oh, and before I forget, prior to that, once she said it was time to push, I told her to cut my epidural in half, because I did want to feel the urge to push. Because I hear if you have an epidural and because your legs are so numb and such, you may end up not having that feeling, and it makes labor a lot worse and possibly ending in a C-section if you can't push the baby out on your own. So at this point when I'm pushing, I had the epidural cut in half, so I was able to feel a lot more, as it wasn't strong. I had the lowest dosage of epidural, and from that I already asked them to cut it in half from already that lower dosage. So, you know, we're pushing, everything's going fine, you know, they're getting stronger and such. Finally she gets, I guess she sees the head and she tells my husband, okay, you know, come on over here and I want you to like look inside. So he looks and she tells him, you know, do you see her head? He said yes, that he saw like her little hair. And she goes, okay, do you think it's real now? And of course that like puts you into gear and like makes you live in the moment and realize how real it is. So then at that point they moved me down on the table and then had my legs up. My husband was helping hold my legs, as well as the nurse on the other side. So I just began pushing. I only had to push for about 35-40 minutes, which for a first time mom, I hear that's like super great. It's super fast. My labor was only, like I said, my water broke at 4 a.m. and I delivered her at 2:33 in the afternoon. But this is where it gets tough. So everything, like I mentioned, was going pretty smooth, pretty the way it's supposed to. You know, pain as usual, you're going to expect from having a baby. But once it was time for the last 15 minutes to push my daughter out, my contractions started to kind of space out. Instead of going every like minute, they were becoming every 2 to 3 minutes. As I'm pushing the baby out, I'm feeling her head go down, and it's literally, the only way I could kind of explain it, like someone has a lighter down there and it's burning that whole area. It was hurting so bad. The baby's head was like halfway out, and at that point the doctor's like, okay, wait, because you're not having a contraction, so there's no point in pushing. So I had to push only when I was having a contraction. But unfortunately, like I said, they were being spaced out. Instead of being every minute, every 30 seconds, which your body is supposed to make the contraction come faster as it's time to help push the baby out, they were coming every 2 to 3 minutes. So picture yourself waiting 2 to 3 minutes, kind of feels like 30 minutes or a lifetime when you have something this big stuck down there. So I just kind of was screaming at the top of my lungs. I would just remember screaming, get her out of me, get her out of me. Like whatever they had to do, whether they had to suction her out, pull her out, and the doctor just wouldn't. She goes, I'm not going to assist you. You can do this on your own. You can do this. Just keep pushing, keep, you know, just listen to me. And it was literally like the most unbearable pain. I don't even like to think about it because it was just horrible. I just felt myself ripping as she was coming out. Then I did another push. She came out to here. My mom was in that area kind of looking at her. She said she'd never seen anything like it. The second her eyes and nose came out so that she could breathe. It was kind of, she was like up to here. My mom said she just started blinking and she was like super alert. And then the doctor said, of course, to, you know, go ahead. I still had a couple more pushes because I now had to get her shoulders out. So I'm thinking the worst part of this is going to be the head. After that, everyone says, oh, it's gonna feel like a little fish swimming out of you. No, those shoulders were killer. I was screaming once again once it was time to push those out. After her shoulders came out, the rest came out nice and smoothly. They of course put her on me for the skin to skin, which I wanted. So I had her on me, I was looking at her, I really wanted to live in the moment. And then they start trying to push out.
Frozen, I have